BBC News, hello, I'm Gareth Barlow. France's President Emmanuel Macron has accused countries who have remained silent about Russia's invasion of Ukraine of serving the cause of what he called Moscow's new imperialism. In a speech to the United Nations General Assembly in New York, Mr. Macron said that the inaction of neutral countries risks destroying the international order.
Those who keep silent today serve, in spite of themselves, or secretly with a certain complicity, the cause of a new imperialism, of a contemporary cynicism that disintegrates our international order, without which peace is impossible. Which one of you would consider that the day something like this was done to you by a more powerful neighbour, the silence of the region and the world would be the best response?
A number of developing countries have resisted lending their support to Ukraine's cause. The European security body, the OSCE, has added its voice to the condemnation of plans by Moscow's proxy states in Ukraine to hold referendums on joining Russia. The OSCE said any such polls would contravene international standards. Bethany Bell reports from Vienna.
The OSCE statement said the planned referendums would be illegal. It said the votes could only be conducted by legitimate authorities in line with national laws. It said that as the war continues, any referendums planned by forces illegally exercising control in the occupied territories of Ukraine would be in contravention of international standards. The votes, it said, would have no legal force.
Street protests sparked by the death of a woman in custody have spread to more towns and cities across Iran. 22-year-old Mahsa Amini died of her injuries 2 days after she was detained by the morality police in Tehran. Demonstrators have been chanting slogans in front of the Interior Ministry in the capital. 4 people have been killed in clashes with police. US prosecutors have charged 47 people for their alleged roles in a $250 million fraud scheme that exploited a program to feed children during the COVID pandemic. The BBC's Azadeh Mashiri reports.
The FBI has called it the biggest fraud case in any pandemic relief program. Prosecutors described a scheme where suspects billed the government for meals meant to feed children who needed them. But there were no children. Instead, the suspects kept $240 million worth of funds and spent it on things like real estate, jewellery, and even luxury cars. It was allegedly coordinated by a non-profit called Feeding Our Future in Minnesota, with shell companies running fake distribution sites meant to feed thousands of children.
World news from the BBC. Hurricane Fiona is continuing to lash parts of the Turks and Caicos Island in the Caribbean with strong winds and heavy rain. The Category 3 hurricane has already caused major damage in the Dominican Republic and the US territory of Puerto Rico, as Wendy Urquhart reports.
Fiona gathered strength before making landfall in the Dominican Republic. It swept across the island, packing winds of up to 184 kilometres an hour, ripping up crops and tearing the roofs off buildings. Several rivers burst their banks, and the streets are littered with fallen trees, lampposts and debris. The National Hurricane Centre is warning that Hurricane Fiona will gather even more strength in the next couple of days to become a Category 4 storm, and the storm surge could raise water levels by more than 2 metres.
Japanese media reports say a man has set fire to himself near the office of the Prime Minister. The man was taken to hospital along with a police officer who tried to put the fire out. One television report said the action had been a protest against plans to hold a state funeral for the former Premier Shinzo Abe. Mr. Abe was shot dead during an election campaign appearance in July. One of Spain's biggest football clubs, Atletico Madrid, has strongly condemned racist chants by some of its supporters outside its stadium before Sunday's derby against fierce rivals Real Madrid. The chants were aimed at Real Madrid's Brazilian winger Vinicius Junior. Atletico has promised to strip club membership from any individuals who took part, saying it had a zero tolerance of racism. And the United States government agency that investigates transport accidents has called for alcohol detection systems to be included in all new vehicles. The National Transportation Safety Board has recommended that new vehicles should be equipped with systems that can prevent or limit their operation if they detect the driver is impaired by alcohol. BBC News.